Hello, good evening. After lunch is difficult sometimes. I want to have a good presentation here and not to sleep. It's a really good panel. We were waiting for the fourth person. It's Mr. Juma will not be here. We don't know if he will arrive. We start with the other three members. I will be the moderator. I am Ramon Sagarra. I'm founder of a company it's a platform for internet. We have a stand in the exposition. I will not explain here what is my company, but it's at the end of the main street near the SEAT, near the car fabric we have the stand near there. Very interesting stand, but today is for her, for the people. If you want to make some questions or something like this, there is an app, Ask and Vote. You can use it. Along the presentation, you can write your questions. You can say, I think this question is interesting or not. I will have an iPad. I suppose someone will provide me an iPad. And at the end of the session, I will make the questions that I understand it's more interesting or more linked with the presentation. Let's start with Mr. Tomas Roy. Mr. Tomas Roy works in the Generalitat of Catalonia in the local regional government. He's the security strategy director of CESICAT. CESICAT it's the center of information of Catalonia. We'll have two presentations of more soft and data infrastructures and one more physical. Please.
Okay. Thanks everybody for coming. We are at the government of Catalonia, so we are responsible of a lot of services which are critical for citizens, and we must take care of most of them from all the kind of threats that we are exposed. So when we have to think about how to handle this presentation, we prefer to have a practical work, a practical scenario on health, because I think that it represents which is the real complexity that we that we are in front of when from a government we try to protect critical infrastructures. First of all, I must also explain that in Spain, the responsible of protection of critical infrastructure is the government of Spain, and it has this competence by themselves. So we must coordinate with them on protection, and what we will explain here is just how to maintain the resilience on our critical services, especially on health. So we are CESICAT. CESICAT is an organization, like an agency, which is responsible for planning, management, and control of cybersecurity on all the government of Catalonia. We have people and responsibles and functions and organization all around the several ministers of the government of Catalonia. And we must be able to handle security issues and also functional security issues. So, in our Catalan health model, we have obviously the Catalan Health Ministry, which define all the strategy plan, organization, assessment, and all the controls of all the centers that collaborate and co-participate in the delivery of the health services. And we are also in coordination with Spanish planning and coordination. We have the citizens are related with the Catalan health, the Health Catalan Service, CatSalut, and also the insurance companies. And then we have several health service providers. Most of them are public, but we have also private them, and also consortiums and foundations which are held from both of them. All the security, like as you can see, there are several players. What we have done is to take the problem from a coordination point of view in a Coordination Security Information Committee, which is the responsible of designing, approve, implement, and supervise action related to information security. We have a cybersecurity model. When we speak about critical infrastructures and their protection, we don't begin just from the technical and physical issues, but we have made an approach that we try to deploy everywhere and in every single provider that is in the health system. So first of all, we work on governance through an organization. Also, we have bet highly on digital identity management. Also, we have defined a compliance framework, which we deploy and we audit, and also a legal assessment. If we speak about protection, we are a bit from the classic school, and we are working hard on security perimeter management. Also, we work very close to projects and development and every improvement and innovation through the security projects methodology. And also, CESICAT is a third, which is a computer emergency response team, which is responsible of the security incident management, which allow us to have a lot of information of the real problems. So we also have the prevention area, which we solve it through the compliance auditing, risk analysis, vulnerability management, and proactive security. And last, we have the resilience, or the most close to critical infrastructure protection, through certification, business continuity and training, and awareness programs. This cybersecurity model concretes in a security program which deploys based on resources excellence, as like most of the strategy programs, but which for us is really important is to have an organization on cybersecurity, which is the main key to deploy and to translate all the needs on requirements and specifications, and so on with those that came out from cybersecurity. We really believe that cybersecurity makes business possible, and it's a help, and it's a must. So we must be very near to the business problems to solve it. Now I'll share with you some of our challenges that we must take care of. We have a very complex organization. Most of our services are very complex with a lot of players. As you can see here, we have this information committee, security information committee that I explained to you, but we must coordinate a lot of players, all of them with their responsibilities, and also we must coordinate among the different responsible of security of all the government of Catalonia. We also take care of data to take decisions and to prioritize, and also we deploy all the different standards that like health we have to implement. If we speak about protection, as I told you, we are a CERT, which gives us a lot of knowledge and tools to monitor and also to handle incidents. We are also a SOC, Security Operational Center, and so with these two tools, we have most of the protection capabilities held. No? We have also a problem with IoT, which is every time more deployed, and we are not afraid of it, but it's true that for us it's a big challenge that I expect that we will be able to speak about in our... Yes? Okay, thanks. And there are the challenges of prevention. We have, as all classical models, based on information classification, but our main problem is we have a lot of providers which develop in our systems and maintain them. So we must bet on security by design and methodologies to implement privacy and also security. We use as much building blocks as possible, especially on identity management and infrastructures, and we accept as an opportunity and a challenge the cloud and the use of IPP, just because we believe that especially the cloud environment is born from the security issue, and they take care from the beginning of the security compliance. No? So we are not afraid of cloud. We have a problem on regulation because we are in Europe, but cloud for us is not a big issue, as can be sometimes a very good player to work with. Compliance of privacy standards is a must, so we must do periodic compliance auditing, and then our investment must be also directed especially on users for all the threats that they are faced directly. Segregation of duties and need-to-know principles are checked in every system, and especially we work on awareness programs trying to make stronger all the chain of security, understanding that that the user wants to be a part of this chain and wants to participate on it, so we must give them tools that allow them to be active on protection and not just a problem. The resilience of our systems is not just infrastructure, but are also centers, also professionals and managers and citizens. So it's a problem that must be taken from a high level and high view. No? We have heterogeneity on IT solution by the providers, so what we have decided is to centralize and give centric solutions and data. Centralized clinical records, My Health, and platform of electronic transfers, electronic prescriptions are examples on which services we are providing to all the health system to be sure that they are that they are compatible and also secure. Privacy and security controls are a must. We have encryption and communication by default, and we must trust on organizations that they are responsible of authentication of their own professionals. So we delegate this part, and we try to implement, we have implemented digital signed transactions by all organizations.
2 minutes.
Gracias. And we try to have a pragmatic continuity solutions approach, not just high cost and highly available solutions, because it's really difficult to reach them without investing a lot of money. So sometimes we find out that it's easier to have a B plan which is based on physical or written documentation or any kind of other solutions that implementing very expensive technological ones. So just thanks for your time. We will we will improve our explanation during the.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tomas. And now it's a pleasure for me to introduce you Ares Gabàs. We worked together many years ago, and it's really a pleasure this time to see another time. She works in the Barcelona municipality, in the Ajuntament, and she's the head of the Resilience Department of the Barcelona city. Please.
Thank you very much, Ramon. Yeah, I'm going to talk about 2 points that we're actually working on and complement each other through two examples. One of them is how cities need to improve the knowledge we have on how the city is performing, and also the capacity to analyze what the problems, the risks that we are facing, and what is the ability of the city to absorb them. And this, I will explain it through a project that we call it the Resilience Platform. And the second one is about designing criteria for infrastructures and climate change. And I'm going to talk about the climate plan and how we need to change the paradigm in the way we design the infrastructures, facing uncertainty. There's a changing nature of risk and also some uncertainty related to it, but we need to plan infrastructures for the future. So what are the strategies we are using in order to enhance more adaptive, greener, and softer infrastructures? So first of all, this is a diagram of how we approach the resilience building process in Barcelona. And it consists of basically three different stages. First of it is responding, managing risk. Whenever we have an incident on the street or on the services, we need to respond and we need to improve the capacity we have in order to minimize the affections. Then we also need to assess. We need to know what the problems are. We need to have the capacity to determine what the vulnerabilities of the city are, so that we can finally, as the third stage, implement actions in order to reduce them or eliminate them. And this confirms a continuous improvement process where we would ideally get to a position where we are better than we were in the beginning of the process. And that is at an operative level, complemented through at a more strategic level with the roadmap design and the planning of the strategy to improve the resilience of the city with a longer vision. So one of the things we realized when we started working on resilience is that we needed to improve the knowledge that we have on how the city was performing, and that we needed to share this information with many different areas within the city. So we needed to build the tools and the capacity within the organization to be able to do that. So we started working on the resilience platforms, which is actually a set of tools that provide a comprehensive overview of the city and how it's performing, allowing for a holistic approach of the governance of the city, and also integrating and sharing information that is useful and that is relevant, so that we have this overall vision to support decision making. Some examples of that, we're already using it within the organization is, for instance, we have an incident on the street, but we don't know what's going on. We don't know what lies beneath, what are the layers of infrastructure of the different services that are running maybe behind this street. So we need to be able to overlap them and to give light to that, so that we can maybe determine the causes, but also prevent failures. Also, on the incidences, we need to be able to locate them, to be able to know what their potential affection is, and actually using this information has proved to reduce the stock of incidences by more than 40%, and also the average resolution time for 60%. So having the information, the right information at the right time really matters. And also we need to analyze at a different speed, not just problem solving, but also analyzing what the problems have been in the past, so that we can learn and we can improve actions in order to reduce them. Or also, even facing new challenges or new risks, as the ones directly related with the impact of climate change. For instance, this is a map that we've been working on the vulnerability assessment, on the flooding, the sewage system of the city, and how prepared it is to respond to a 10-time return period rain now, but also for the future scenario, so that we can determine the affection areas and also implement measures in order to protect the critical infrastructures that are within the area. And very fast, well, this is some of the information that we are collecting, that we are generating, and we've become aware that this is information that is relevant for more people than just us. So we are creating a new initiative, which is called the Resilience Atlas, which is a compilation of all this information that is territorialized, because we mainly work territorially and problems happen in a certain place, and we need to address them in particular areas of the city. So another dimension of this project is also the information sharing and giving light to this problem, and making this information new base information for many other people working in the city. And secondly, I'm going to talk about the climate plan and how we need to change the paradigm on the way we are planning for infrastructure for the long term, regarding the uncertainty that there is in the future scenarios. So we have this climate plan, which is focused on the people. The center is the people, so improve the quality of life, because all these infrastructures and services are serving the people. and also in a comprehensive way, and that provides measures that improve the adaptation of the city in order to absorb all these shocks that in some cases we know more or less what they look like, but in the longer term of the projections, the more level of uncertainty on how the future is going to look like is. So, and also enhancing other types of the renovation of the current infrastructure, and including introduction of renewable energies, and so. So, yeah, we have some numeric objectives for the climate plan, which is the 40% reduction of the greenhouse emissions in respect with the baseline of 2005, also including more greening the city, 1 more square meter per inhabitant, which is quite ambitious for a city like Barcelona. So dense and so compact, also reducing energy poverty, and also providing engaging citizens to co-design and co-implement the measures of the plan. So enhancing citizen participation and action. So we have studied how is climate change going to affect Barcelona, and what I was saying before, there's a level of uncertainty on how it's going to affect us. So this means that we need to make sure that all the infrastructures that we are building, all the services, all the actions, meet some values, such as making a healthier Barcelona, more socially just, more habitable and safe, a low carbon and distributive, enhancing also efficient and renewable energies, learning through the projects, and with a committed citizenship. And also looking for solutions that solve more than one problem in order to maximize the investment, and also that are as adaptive as possible. So we are enhancing greener, softer, more adaptive infrastructure versus more rigid, gray, or traditional infrastructure. We have come with 15 lines of action. Some of them have a lot to do with energy and the introduction of more renewable energies, which also contributes to having, being more resourceful and not so dependent on one type of particular type of energy. Also protecting and naturalizing as much as we can the city. And so all these measures, we match them with these values to make sure that no matter what the future looks like, what we are now foreseeing or not, all the values, all the measures and actions that we're implementing have a value in themselves and provide also co-benefits.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very good presentation. At the end, I have many questions, but we wait. The next one is Mr. Jed Sundwall. He managed the Open Data program at Amazon Web Services, and he's based in Munich. Please.
Thank you very much. Buenas tardes. Thank you, Thomas and Ares, for your presentation. So I don't have slides, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I do at Amazon Web Services, a little bit about what Amazon Web Services is, and how the cloud can be applied to secure critical infrastructure when you need it. So first of all, I think it's always important to start with the definition of the cloud. So the way that Amazon Web Services defines the cloud is it is the on-demand delivery of IT resources, this is computing power, storage, applications, etc., over the internet with pay-as-you-go pricing. So what this means is that if you need to have access to computing infrastructure, whatever it is that you need, you can get it on demand and you will only pay for what you need. Now, it probably sounds like I just said exactly what I just said, but just in case it helps to rephrase it. But one of the huge benefits of the cloud when it comes to disaster recovery is that you can have access on demand to computing resources that aren't close to where you are. Okay, this is especially important if we're dealing with natural catastrophes or things that might be impacting your physical infrastructure. And as Tomas pointed out, there's a huge benefit that comes with the cloud, which is that we are built from the ground up with security top of mind. So security is our number one priority at Amazon Web Services because it's, if you think about it at all, it's absolutely core to our business. If people don't trust us to ensure the security of their infrastructure that they're purchasing from us, we have no business, right? And so we invest heavily and constantly in security and resilience because it's absolutely core to our business. And in fact, this may not give people as much confidence as it gives me, but I really love this quote, which is from Amazon CTO Werner Vogels, which is that everything fails all the time. That is the mindset with which we approach how we build services, is that we understand, or at least expect, that things are always going to fail, and so that you have to architect for failure all the time to ensure security, to ensure redundancy, and make sure that not if failure occurs, but when failure occurs, that the data will be still secure and it will be backed up and available. Now, so I'm going to share a few examples of how people have been able to create more secure solutions in the cloud, or at least more resilient solutions. And so one of my favorite stories comes from Asheville, North Carolina. So in Asheville, they had a disaster recovery site. So they had their city's infrastructure, their IT infrastructure that was used to manage all sorts of transactions and ensure the operation of certain systems. And then they had a backup site that had the same infrastructure, the same applications loaded, everything else they needed in case anything went wrong with their main infrastructure. It just so happens, though, that their backup infrastructure was 2 blocks away from their main infrastructure. Okay, and so this is a really good example, and I'm not exactly sure what sort of compliance regime they were under at this time, but this is the sort of thing that, like, somebody somewhere might say this is compliant, right? Okay, we have our infrastructure, we've got a backup, great, we're compliant. Fortunately, somebody pointed out at some point, if anything actually happens, like if there's an earthquake or if some major storm actually reaches Asheville, our backup is going to be absolutely useless to us. It's just 2 blocks away. It's going to go out as soon as the power goes out for the main one. And so they developed a solution that would allow them to have their backup infrastructure in the cloud, quite a bit further remote from Asheville itself. And one strategy that you can take in these cases is having a pilot light infrastructure. And this is actually what's pretty interesting in the context of smart cities, as we're talking more and more about sensors, is that with a pilot light model, you can have your infrastructure on standby. So you might have the applications and everything loaded and ready to go, but you don't actually have all the servers running. So you basically just have like an image waiting to be deployed as soon as you need to turn on a bunch of servers in the case of a catastrophe. So it's sitting there waiting basically for a trigger to turn it all on. So what's interesting about this approach is that if you have sensors within your city, so perhaps something that's sensing floodwater or a seismic sensor, anything that you want, you can actually have those sensors trigger operations that would then turn on and automatically activate this infrastructure that's remote. Now, so I lead the open data program at AWS, and so I tend to focus on organizations that have data they actually want to share publicly with the world. And so we work a lot with satellite data and a lot of mapping data. Some of you may have heard of OpenStreetMap. We have a lot of customers on AWS that use OpenStreetMap, and so we provide infrastructure to support some of the operations of that community. I bring this up now because I think another thing that's important for cities to understand now is that because of, I won't even say because of the cloud, but of course the cloud is part of this, but just because of the internet, you also have assets at your disposal that you can make part of your city's infrastructure. So what do I mean by that? With OpenStreetMap, you have access to mapping data that's updated in as close to real time as possible that you can use. And I understand why many cities and many organizations might have a certain fear of using a crowdsourced mapping service, but I can tell you that there are many, many large companies and also organizations, including the Red Cross, that rely heavily on OpenStreetMap data. The data is very good, it is very useful, and it's better than having no data in the case of some sort of event. So consider looking at things like OpenStreetMap as a part of your infrastructure, as part of the assets that you can use for your city in the case of a disaster. Also satellite data. So fortunately, we have some very generous governments in the world that produce satellite imagery that is publicly available. The European Space Agency, for instance, has its Copernicus program, which includes the Sentinel satellites. So the Sentinel-2 satellite is an optical satellite that produces optical data, imagery of the entire planet. And I think at this point, it's something like every 5 days you can get imagery of most places in Europe. Now, the data isn't very, very high resolution, but it can be used in disaster response. And a really awesome example of how this has been used is in 2016, it's either 2015 or 2016, there's an earthquake in Ecuador, and a group called Zooniverse, so this is a nonprofit organization, they're run out of, I think like Oxford, but it's a nonprofit group that they run these really interesting crowdsourcing interfaces for volunteer response. So there's an earthquake in Ecuador, so we actually host Sentinel-2 data through my program on AWS. And so Zooniverse said, okay, we've got access to the satellite imagery. Let's go grab it out of AWS. We'll create this interface in this website where people can come and actually look at the imagery, the latest imagery post-earthquake, and identify where there have been landslides, where can we see that there are roads that have been disrupted and things like that. And then that data and that imagery was used to notify first responders and also update OpenStreetMap, for instance, with updated routing information. And so again, this is an example of, thanks to the internet, cities have access to satellite data. Most cities, in fact, I don't know of any cities that have launched their own satellites, but the point is that you actually have this asset available to you. And then finally, there's social media. So social media can also be used to monitor basically what's happening in your city, whether it's through Twitter or Facebook posts or Instagram things that you can actually source and analyze. A really cool example of this comes from Chicago. They have an application called Open Grid that they've actually open sourced that allows city staff, police, law enforcement, and first responders to browse social media data within a certain polygon, basically within their city, to basically draw a polygon and say, like, what's going on in this part of the city? What do we know that's actually happening here? And it combines both their information that they get from the city as well as information from social media. There's another group called Peta Bencana out of Indonesia. And all the people involved in this, I've lost track, but it's a group out of Australia, and then MIT as well is involved in here. They've also built an open source application that can do this. They've built for Indonesia. They started in Jakarta, but they've expanded to the entire country to use social media to track information about flooding in up-to-date time. So anyway, so those are a few stories here of how the cloud can be used, not only to basically create a redundant backup of your own infrastructure, that's very secure and reliable, but also how it gives you access to massive volumes of external data that you can also incorporate into your city. And then I'll just close with 3 words. Am I out of time? Okay. So the 3 words are undifferentiated heavy lifting. So this is a phrase that I love to use. It describes really one thing that the cloud is very good at, which is it removes undifferentiated heavy lifting from people's jobs. So when I say that, what I mean is everybody who works in IT has to deal with servers and running out of space and running out of capacity, securing those servers, cooling them, powering them, et cetera, et cetera. The cloud lets you not worry about that stuff as much. Okay, so you can just turn on whatever servers you need whenever you want to. So you can focus on the stuff that really differentiates your city, which is your people, your staff, your hospitals, and really focusing on the critical infrastructure that only the city can provide. So anyhow, I look forward to our discussion in the panel, and thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We have 20 minutes. I received 2 or 3 questions too, and I have 1 or 2 comments. The first one, we heard about climatic change. I think there is many levels. Probably the name of the session have to be different, and strategies to protect persons, data, and critical structure and assets, because we see that there is an order here, and probably the strategies for the persons, for the data, and for the infrastructures and assets are not exactly the same. At the end, we have seen with the data we can protect the physical things, and when we talk about the data, we suppose the rest are okay, no? Probably we have to make some layers in this. There is one of the questions that links with one thing that I write. When we say protect in the name of the session, what do you think about? To protect in front what? In the question says talking about data, sensitive data and open data have the same range of protection, and also if you consider terrorism aggressions of the for this reason each one it's an expert in each area. When you say protect, the first things that you think to protect, that you have to protect in front of something, which subjects are? Here there is a micro. It works? Yes.
Well, for me, when I think about protecting, I think about city service continuity, but services that are for people, like you said. You finish your presentation that what really matters is what the city is offering to the citizens, or the hospital, education, the cultural services, or what the services that the city is offering, that we need to guarantee that they meet certain standard and that they can continue to function no matter what the disturbance is or what the disturbances are. So for me, that is what I think of when I think about protecting the access of the services to the people.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree with that. You know, you want the service to be available, right? So that's kind of number one when you're talking about protection in these cases. The question though about, you know, like health data versus open data, you know, how important is it to protect both of those? You know, sometimes I'm able to say, well, open data is open, so you can be, you know, you don't have to worry so much about security when you're opening up data. That's absolutely false. That's like crazy talk from my perspective, because especially when, say you're a city that you're producing some sort of open data asset and you're making it available to people, you really want to make sure that data is accurate. You know, you really want to make sure that data is valid and that people can trust its provenance as being, you know, being authentic. And so security, yeah, I mean, it's absolutely critical. And you know, and I'm not like a, you know, I don't like to talk about like terrorism as like all these like crazy risks that might happen, but it is a real threat that, you know, somebody could come into a city or a government that's producing a data asset and change it just a little bit. You know, just decalibrate things or mess with a sensor or something like that, so it produces inaccurate data. So that's a real threat. Security is really, really important for open data.
For me, for us at least, the protection is becoming harder, stronger, trying to make things more difficult to pain us, no? But there is one point that sometimes we don't speak about that is especially important to protect someone, that is detection. I think that the capability to detect, to understand, to analyze what is happening, and then to react. But if you are not able to detect, you don't know that you are in danger, so you cannot protect. So you must put protection in act, but also you must be sure that you are able to detect that someone is happening.
One other question. Where do you have a city and organization have to put more resources? In protect or in good reaction? That means in resilience or in reaction? It's not easy, because each administration have different...
Actually, both are
I know, but it's the easy answer.
No, but I mean, both are, for me, are part of building resilience of the city, being able to respond and also being able to prevent. And actually, there are some figures, I think it's by World Bank, that by every $1 invested in protection, you can save 5 in reconstruction. So the numbers say that maybe we need to, and personally I think if we can go to the route, if we can anticipate risk and implement actions in order to reduce the probability of occurrence of this risk, it's always a good, because sometimes it's about service continuity, but sometimes it can even be about life. And now we're talking about Barcelona, But in other cities in the world, risks are affecting directly to people. So.
Yes, the answer is both. Of course, hearing you talk, then of course, I do think that being able to prevent is perhaps more important. But at the same time, I feel like that instinct, probably a lot of people have that instinct, and as a result, communication strategies and response strategies get overlooked, which is just awful because like I said before, everything fails all the time. You can invest all that you want in prevention, but something is going to happen if you don't have a means by which you can communicate clearly and accurately and with authority with your citizens in response to something. You're in pretty bad shape, and I don't think people take that as seriously as they could.
Our main business and success is on protection, and we came from there. No, and this is where we win trust on us on protection, I think. But however, we must admit that there are a lot of emerging threats that every $1 that we put on protection, there can be lost, no? And every investment cannot be useful if there is a change or interruption in innovation and also in threats, no? So we must be able to recover in any case from not just if our protection fails, but in any case. I will also like to speak about that most of us have been working for years to be with embedded protection. Citizens feel protected, and technology gives us protection. And now there has been changes, new technologies that sometimes they don't arrive to the level of protection we were used to. It's strange to ask someone to patch their computer or to speak about having a password or to upgrade their software, something like that. Now there are some technologies that are coming up that when you see the problems that you have to protect from, it seems that it's back to the past, no? And you find out that there are things that you suppose that you have been working hard not to work again towards that, and not absolutely with citizens taking care of that, because they think that you will give them secure services. And I expect that from innovation will respect the level of security that people assumes that must be given by out of the shelf.
Okay. And now an exam. In your organizations, do you think you can continue providing service after a crack electrical networks in 2 hours, 10 hours one day? Can you continue providing your job with 1 day energy fail? Electrical energy disappear?
You mean an interruption of 1 day?
1 day. You can say 2 hours, yes, because I have machines,
you have
batteries, but 1 day, or what is your limit?
To the last question, you need to accept a certain level of risk also, because trying to investments to protect yourself against everything, one, you don't know what everything you can face in the future. So, and secondly, it would be very expensive. So you need to accept that you will be exposed to certain risk, and you have to find the balance between the investment and the level of protection. So back to your question, if we could, well, depending on the
service.
So we provide service level agreements for many of our products that do provide that authorization, or so that assurance. And of course, again, if anything ever happens, because everything fails all the time, the way our service level agreements work is we pay people. We actually pay people back anything that they would have paid on us during that failure. But I would say that the answer is basically yes. Everything that we do is massively redundant. to the point that our data centers are actually located within a certain region. We have clusters of data centers that are on separate power grids, separate floodplains. They are designed specifically to be resilient to power outages and things like that.
We prioritize and we protect which are more critical, and we try to recover the minimum resilience services. But however, in health system, the most important resource are doctors. So without doctors, we will fail. This is sure. Without electricity, they'll do their best.
It's more critical than energy, electrical energy, the doctors. Well, last question. We founded our societies over the infrastructures that civil engineers designed over the criteria. This criteria that was historical series, Ares said for the sewerage system of Barcelona, they consider 20 years, I think you said, but with the climate change, this criteria disappear because the historical series doesn't work. That probably means the infrastructures that we found, our buildings, our roads, our highways, our homes, now nobody knows if they are okay. Okay, you understand? How do you think we have to affront this history, this amazing situation that all the people say, well, I put this bridge here and I know after 500 years of rains and everything, this bridge will be there. Now nobody knows how long a bridge will be there. How do you affront, not the criteria for the future, I see you work on this, but what sensation do you have or what do you think, how people can affront this?
Well, it's the complicated part, managing this uncertainty. And that's what I mentioned in my presentation, that we need to include criteria, think of multifunctional infrastructures that are maybe, because they require a great investment and we need to maximize this investment. So, and maybe think of software also, measures that can be adaptive in the future. So they are not rigid, and that we are aware and that we recognize that, well, we plan them now, we build them now, but they have a lifetime, a very long lifetime, and we will need to be able to adjust them to new challenges. So I think we need to think in terms of making them more flexible, because we will for sure need to be evolving them, and also this other point, trying to think of solutions that solve more than one problem, that provide co-benefits, and also that provide multiple functions, because maybe most of their lifetime they won't be in use if we only think about 500-time return period rain. So it may never happen. So in the meantime, we need to be able to do something with that also.
Thanks. This is actually one of the things that excites me about Internet of Things, which I think you can appreciate, is that as we instrument more of our infrastructure, we can know a lot more about our infrastructure. So one way I talk about this a lot is I always talk about lowering the cost of knowledge. So previously, so you talk about a bridge. How many times can you afford to spend a human inspector out to a bridge and have them pay attention long enough to every detail of the bridge to determine, if it's bearing its load appropriately? An example of how this works is Transport for London. They instrument everything within their system to the point they know how fast the escalators are running. They know the weight of cars, of trains. And based on the data that they have that sensors are producing, it's very cheap for them to know, that escalator is running anomalously slow, or these trains are really heavy, or they're going slow, and things like that. So as sensors get cheaper and managing and analyzing this data gets easier, it lowers the cost of us knowing of what the health of our infrastructure.
I'm not a climate expert, no? But what I think about it is that which changes can have for a city like Barcelona if there is a weather change. Which changes has for a country like Andorra when there is a weather change, no? And we must be aware and take an economy way also of resilience and continuity in a city that is so beautiful and with so many things that they have attractives that are near of the weather and the climate, no? And that's the reflection.
Thank you very much. Jed, a little bit, I have an idea to close the...
I have another question.
Oh, please. We have 3 or 4 more minutes.
Yes, we have here Mr. Amazon, so
Wow.
let's ask. Okay, if there is a data breach or there is any attack, you are obligated to inform your clients?
Absolutely.
Don't micro.
Absolutely, yes. We lose all credibility if we're not transparent with our customers about such things.
You inform them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Another.
Oh boy! All right. Here we go.
Do you have any policy from connections that are from, for example, Tor networks?
I do not know the answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, and the last one. Excuse me. There are really critical services that are depends on Amazon services from, for example, cities that they are or industry that they put their critical services, not backup services, their business on Amazon. Can you say one example? And which kind of insurance or which kind of coverage do you have to offer them in case of major or this risk that you cannot transfer? How can they transfer them to you?
Okay, this is this is called the hot seat. So I don't know examples or any information about insurance or policies that we provide for anything like that, other than our publicly available service level agreements. But we have many banks, thousands at this point of government organizations that use AWS for their infrastructure. Many of those, including for mission critical infrastructure, including defense agencies and all sorts of transportation agencies as well that have critical infrastructure running, tracking data about infrastructure and people and citizens moving around the world. So I think one of our most high-profile banking customers is Capital One. They do a ton of stuff on us. I wish I had better examples off the top of my head in terms of those kinds of customers. But many government organizations that work in defense and in transportation infrastructure use AWS. One good example of this is the U.S. Navy. They use us for many mission-critical applications.
Cool.
I have one question for us.
2 minutes. The machine says 2 minutes.
Excuse me. No, it's just as you show us a lot of information that you handle. If it comes from sensors, how can you protect sensors and avoid to have attacks on them or the defacement on data? And if you have any project on citizen as a sensor?
I'm actually not an expert on the technological part of it, so I'm sorry I'm not able to answer to the first part of your question. What was the last part?
No, if you have citizens as a sensor.
Oh, citizens. Yeah, of course. Yeah. They collaborate, and we have sources. We have channels with citizens to report. For instance, the maps that I showed with the incidences in the city, many of them come directly from citizens reporting by telephone, email, or even we have a mobile app. Yeah.
I have an answer to his first question.
I have alternative. No. And after I close, you and after I close.
The sensor is transparency is very important here. This kind of overlaps with what I said before about maintaining credibility. Sensors will fail. Sensors might become corrupted in some way, or a good example of this. There's a satellite called Landsat that there was a failure. The sensor started producing weird data. The providers of that data were very transparent with the community. Said the sensor failed. Here's what we know about the failure, and here's the data that's being produced. And the community figured out how to work around that and deal, extract value from the data they could get, even though the sensor was not perfectly calibrated anymore. So it all has to do with communication to retain the trust and usefulness of the data from a sensor.
I have my own micro. Now I close. Fast answer. People as a sensor, sure. With the mobile, when you make a transportation in a city, the telephone companies see what is the movement of the people, and in this way they can optimize the routes of the bus, the autobus in the cities, the matrix origin destination. You can make the best solution for the public transportation using only the localization of the people that move in a city. There is many other answers on this about the sensors. If probably the challenge today for the sensors in the Internet of Things is what is the information as a sensor provide, and what is this information for? There is a lot of information, but you want to use it. What this means, in which situation? This is the correct measure of this data. And Internet of Things can manage a lot of data, but when you want to use a data, what is this data? You understand me? This is the challenge today. For specific things, you can take in different ways, the same data. But the philosophy of Internet is not to do 3 times the same data. It's to have many data, okay? At the end, you will have to correlate data in different origins to have information. Not data, to arrive to information. Now I close. Before, when I made my last question about the civil engineers and the bridges, the idea was to close saying that probably the Internet of Things, the sensors, can provide us information about our infrastructure. You said something like this, and well, only we are right here. There is 1 minute to finish. Say thank you. Nobody slept. I was seeing you. Nobody's slept. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for the speakers. Thank you.